this is my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so we have yet again another origin story for one of these characters. This time we have an origin story for Guido Mista and how he actually, well, not so much how he came to work for the gang, but rather how he came to regard 4 as an unlucky number. And also we find out we see his fight with Sale in this episode, and it's a very interesting fight, and it is very interesting to see how Sale was actually able to try and fight against Mista. It didn't work because Mista's obviously one of the protagonists, but it was interesting seeing his strategy on how to actually defeat Mista. But in any case, it does start off explaining the story of how Mista came to regard 4 as an unlucky number. And long story short, it just shows what kind of life he led leading up to a particular incident that led him to regard 4 as an unlucky number. So as the narrator explains, Mista is very much a guy who likes to live a simple life. He's not a very complicated guy. He's very simple-minded, and he just kind of goes about his business as simply as possible. He just likes living life, and that's really it. But very early on in his life, he actually found out that people actually have predetermined fates, based on a certain incident that he was in. The incident in question is just that he was going about his life as usual. He flirted with some girls who he knew. He was just going around town, just going on one of his usual walks, and he notices a girl is being beaten up and potentially raped in a car. So he goes to intervene without even thinking and pulls the guy out of the car and starts beating his ass. At which point his brothers then proceed to get out of the car as well. So he quickly realizes that he's in a very dangerous position, but it doesn't. Interestingly enough, he gets shot at several times and just does not die. So none of the guys are actually completely sure about what's going on. They all unload their guns at him and just kind of start opening fire. And they all completely and utterly miss him. At which point he picks up a gun for himself, loads 4 bullets into it, and then shoots 4 bullets, killing the 3 brothers, and unfortunately, it is heavily implied, the young woman who was actually being raped that he was actually trying to save. So, yeah, that's how he came to regard 4 as an unlucky number. The 4th shot killed somebody he wasn't trying to kill. And at which point he decided to escape from the cops, and presumably from there he started working for Team Bucciarati and became their marksman. But in case, back in the present day, Mista is still hanging onto the truck and is about to shoot the truck driver, who I should mention in the last episode isn't actually Sale, and Mista does eventually deduce that himself. But the reason I said that is because they look very similar. So the truck driver looks a lot like Sale, but isn't actually Sale. And Mista figures this out by actually taking a quick glance at the dude's leg and realizing that he doesn't have a bullet stuck in it. So he then proceeds to redirect his attack back into Sale, who is actually hiding on top of the truck, and successfully shoots him in the head. So it's at this point where Mista actually thinks the fight is over and thinks he's actually won and defeated Sale, only for Sale to get back up despite having a bullet in his head. Sale then proceeds to gloat, pointing out that he was a little bit worried because it's a surprise attack. But does point out that now that he's actually in a position where he can actually successfully save himself and defend himself, he points out that now Mista actually has no real chance of actually defeating him. And case in point, Mista opens fire on him with 3 more rounds of his bullets from his gun, and Sale actually uses his stand Kraft work, which we see first in this episode, to actually deflect the bullets. And Sale points out that it's kind of useless for Mista to actually try and open fire on him, since the way his Kraft work works, it actually prevents him from actually being defeated. And Mista's still a little confused. But then Sale decides to point out that he realizes that Mista is completely out of bullets, pointing out that he fired two in the boat shack and another 4 at Sale during their brief fight. And points out that and points out that he's out. And Mista quickly realizes that he is indeed out, and realizes he needs to reload, and gets ready to go take his hand off the truck to try and reload his bullets, but he realizes he can't. He realizes that his hand is actually affixed to the truck now. And also hollers at the truck driver to actually stop, but the truck driver points out that he can't stop either. So he really points out that he can't actually move the steering wheel or his hand or his gas. And Mista quickly realizes that this is actually what Kraftwerk's power actually is. He realizing that he does confirm this when he notices that the bullets he shot at Sail earlier are now floating around his head. And Mista does eventually conclude that Kraftwerk's ability is likely that he can actually affix things into place. Case in point, they're all fixed around Sail, and neither the truck driver or Mista can actually move from where they are. And Sail actually does confirm this. He does point out that this is indeed his stand's power, and that he's actually able to use it to actually halt the momentum of anything his stand touches. And that's so even if Mista actually had an ability to fire, he wouldn't be able to. And even pointed out that he actually told everybody what was going on. Told Mista what was going on was because A, Mista is the only one who's seen his face so far, and B, he also points out that Mista won't be able to fire with his hand affixed to the truck as it is. And then proceeds to get ready to actually go and try and finish Mista off, only for Mista to reveal that he actually hid some bullets in his mouth and then proceeds to spit them into his gun, which Sex Pistols then proceeds to reload. And he then proceeds to fire a bullet into Sail's neck while he's scrambling to defend himself, and sends Sail flying off of the truck, which quickly enables him to actually defend himself, to actually let go of the truck, and the truck driver is able to finally stop. And Sail kind of bellyaches a little bit about how he got shot again, but because of his stand, he was able to defend himself before he actually got shot, so he's completely and utterly fine. But he does point out that he's a little bit annoyed that Mista shot him again. Pointing out that while he can't stop the bullets, it still hurts like hell. So he does continue to try and chase after Mista, and the truck driver is a little bit relieved that he was actually able to stop. But then Mista tells him to keep going, pointing out that he actually get back to the marina to meet with Giorno. Pointing out that if he can get back to Giorno, they can actually work together to actually defend against Sail, and actually figure out a way to actually find a way back to actually defeat Sail together. And meanwhile, while the truck driver is actually doing that and taking Mista back to the marina using the back road, Giorno has since figured out that Mista is actually in a truck and is actually possibly engaged in a stand battle. So he quickly realizes that he needs to find somebody to actually take him to the top of the mountain to help Mista. Meanwhile, Mista is pointing out that he seems to only have 4 bullets left, and quickly realizes that he is indeed completely out, and begins to panic because he realizes that shooting from a group of 4 again, he realizes is bad luck. So he realizes that he's a little bit dangerous. That's a little bit dangerous, and his stand even points this out to him, that they are quick to point out that he actually dropped some, and that if he hadn't done that, he likely would still have a full group of 6, but because of that, he now has a group of 4, and they even tell him not to put the last bullet in, since obviously they continue onward with Mista's whole entire ideal that he's actually only got that 4 is actually an unlucky number. At which point Mista, while the truck is driving, points out that he actually needs to get back to his stuff since he has more bullets there. And points out that if he's able to get back, it won't be a group of 4 anymore, and he'll be able to defend himself, but more accurately. But he realizes that he doesn't have a chance because he eventually sees Sail floating near the cliff, and quickly realizes that they need to actually stop the truck. So he tells the truck driver, who doesn't understand at first until he sees Sail floating and realizes that he actually does need to stop the truck. At which point Sail then proceeds to declare that he's not going to let Mista get back to Giorno, just pointing out that if Giorno sees his face, it's game over, and points out that all he really needs to do is kill Mista, and then points out that now that since he knows that Mista is actually attacking him, that he knows that it exists, and that he's determined to actually defeat Mista so he can actually find Popel's fortune. So yeah, he continues. So, and with that, he then proceeds to scatter some gravel around, which is revealed that he actually used as a ladder, since he can actually affix them into place, and then just kind of rock climbed his way up using all the gravel they chucked around. And Mista also confirms that as well, pointing out that Kraftwerk is truly an incredible stand if it's able to basically make a ladder out of nothing. If it has that ability, Mista points out that he clearly doesn't stand much of a chance. But in any case, Sale then proceeds to come back. And actually proceeds to get ready to actually fire a bullet at Mista. As it turns out, he actually has an ability. His ability, in addition to being able to stop things, he can actually store potential energy inside an object that he's touched by tapping it. In case in point, he taps the bullet and slowly increases its power until it goes into firing velocity. And he then proceeds to show off his ability to actually just store potential energy, and Mista, in an effort to actually defeat Sale, who is now standing on top of the truck, tries to actually shoot him with 3 of his bullets, but he's actually shot at the same time by Kraftwerk, and is badly injured, but still very much alive. And his attack completely misses. At which point Sale gloats that's completely pointless, and that Mista's clearly on his last legs, and that now he only needs one last bullet to actually finish Mista off. Meanwhile, Mista quickly realizes that he's in dire straits because he's actually firing his 4th and final bullet, but he does point out that 4 has been an unlucky number with him since it was a kid, but other than that, it's not a bad number. And also begins to rationalize that now that he's actually fired 3 bullets, it's actually a group of 1, which makes it a lot safer. So, as Sale is kind of monologuing about how he's going to defeat Mista, Mista points out that he only has 1 bullet left, and points out that it would be that now it's a fair fight, pointing out that now Sale knows exactly how many bullets he has. And Mista's entire plan is that he's actually going to fire into Sale's mouth in an effort to try and kill him, pointing out that he likely can't defend the inside of his body as well as the outside. So that's his entire plan. He actually prepares one final shot, and the remaining 3 Sex Pistols actually gather inside the 1 revolver chamber that's left, so that Mista can actually fire it and redirect it back at him. And Mista then proceeds to actually fire it directly at Sale, who does, and Sex Pistols even points out that they only have the 1 target. But when they realize that Sale has actually opened his mouth on his own, they decide to actually just charge in. And it's quickly revealed that again, that doesn't work, because obviously if Sale can defend himself on the outside of his body by pausing their abilities midair, then obviously he can do the same on the inside of his body. So he points out that there wasn't really any real need to defend the inside of his mouth from Mista, since he can easily defend it, and although he does again declare that it does hurt like hell, and does point out that he is a little annoyed, but he does point out that now that Mista's completely out of bullets, he realizes there's no real threat, and just kind of takes his sweet time charging up the bullet for one final attack. And points out that now this is how Mista is actually going to die, but then quickly realizes that this is actually what Mista wanted all along. So as he quickly finds out, Sex Pistol's entire goal wasn't to actually shoot Sale, but to actually get to the bullet that he was actually charging up. In case in point, when it becomes apparent that his bullet is now going to fire on its own, and realizing that they're too close to actually defend, he realizes that he's kind of screwed, but he does realize that he can still use Kraftwerk to defend himself. At which point Sex Pistols proceeds to ride on the bullet that Sale has fired using his Kraftwerk, and redirects it back at him. And he quickly tries to defend himself, only for them to actually reveal that they actually have another ability, which is that they can actually split any bullet that they have by kicking it. and that they can actually use their ability to actually create multiple bullets from one. So with that, they actually use their ability to divide the bullet while redirecting it back at him, and it goes around Kraftwerk. And at which point Cell realizes what Mista is actually going for, and proceeds to panic because what Mista is actually going for is the bullet that's already lodged in Cell's head. And he does succeed, and Mista and Sex Pistols does succeed in actually hitting it, which does cause the bullet that's already in Cell's head to kind of lodge itself in even further, finally penetrating his skull and as we find out, not kill him, but potentially completely incapacitate him going forward. So now he's actually unable to actually fight anymore, or is forced to retire because obviously he's got a bullet in his head. He's not really in any position to actually fight anymore. And Mista even points this out himself, that it was a close call, and he really didn't want to kill him, but he does point out that, and he even points out that Bruchardi didn't want him dead anyway, but since they needed him alive to actually figure out what he knows and why he's actually after Popo's fortune. But he then realizes that Sale is actually very much alive thanks to his Kraftwerk. With Mista merely remarking that he's actually completely invincible, that he really is invincible. Pointing out that even with a bullet in his head, he was able to actually defend himself with his Kraftwerk at the last minute. And then realizes that he actually needs to get him back to the marina. So he has the truck driver take him back, and then scoops up Sale's, well, not lifeless, but incapacitated body, and proceeds to haul him off to go get some medical attention. And the truck driver, after getting him back to the marina, proceeds to complain about how everybody kept ordering him around. Pointing out that they wanted him to stop and start, then stop, then start again. And he points out that he's done with it and hopes he doesn't have to deal with anybody else. Only for Giorno, who we established that was looking for a ride back up to the top of the island, takes him back up to the top of the island, not realizing that Mista has already arrived back at the marina and that the fight is completely over. So yeah, Giorno kind of takes this guy, to add insult to injury, Giorno takes this guy on one last trip up the mountain. So which the guy is a little bit annoyed about. But this was an interesting fight. It was a fight between a guy who can redirect bullets versus a guy who can stop them in midair. And it was very interesting to see how the two actually fought one another. So because So I should mention, Kraftwerk was very interesting. Its ability to actually stop things in midair is actually kind of cool. We're likely never going to see that again because obviously Cell's a bad guy, and on top of that, he's got a bullet in his head, so he's likely not in a position to actually be able to fight anybody anymore. But yeah, it was very interesting seeing how Mista actually operates in a fight. And it was very interesting seeing his backstory as well about why he actually regards 4 as an unlucky number. He shot 4 people, and one of them was somebody that he was trying to save. So that's why he regards 4 as an unlucky number going forward. So yeah, it was very interesting seeing how he actually came to that philosophy and how he actually uses that philosophy in a fight. So yeah, in any case, that's my review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. What you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm not always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support me. So yeah, I could just go check all of those out. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch. Link is down in the description. I stream every Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to check those out, by all means, go check that out. We're actually streaming Metopia. We're actually finishing Metopia. Actually, I think my next stream on that will be the last episode, pretty much. At least until I decide to do the post game, which will probably come later. But yeah, for right now, I thank you, and also you can also check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. Top video is the most recent one, may or may not be this one. Bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any of all those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!